Today we're building 3 easy storage projects to help you organize your kitchen. And we're addressing some of the heavy hitters today. I'm talking spices, which are always insane, baking supplies and large containers, and also those large kitchenware that are always up in some random cabinet that you can't ever access. Aha! And as an added bonus, I'm going to show you how you can use one of these to hide away your secret snacks. Our first project is going to be the simplest by far, and we're only going to be using one piece of wood for this. We're going to start off by cutting this board into 4 pieces, 2 long pieces for the sides and then 2 shorter pieces for the shelves. Now, I did use my miter saw for the first cuts, but you can use something as easy and basic as this little miter box. So these 4 pieces are all I'm going to need for this spice rack, because this is a VIP spice rack. We're not trying to hold a whole bunch of spices because we have so many spices in the kitchen. I'm always up there looking around. I'm finding like 2 things of ginger, coriander, some garam masala. I have no idea what that is. Oh, geez. Here's some of the spices I use the most: some Lowry's, some Puckett's, and some Montreal seasoning. Up here on the second shelf, maybe some garlic salt and lemon pepper. And this is gonna work perfect for these style spices, 5 or 6 of them. Now we are gonna have the shelves, but we need to make sure that the spices don't fall out when we're opening and closing the door, because this is gonna go on the back of our door. So instead of just putting some wood across the front, I want to spice it up a little bit with a little aluminum rod. All I want to do is make sure that it is low enough that if it falls over, it won't roll out underneath. The great thing about these is that you can make them however you want to. So if you wanted to use some other type of materials, other different spacing, it is super easy to configure and change because it's such a simple project. We want to make sure that these holes are nice and clean and that we don't go out the other side of the board and have any blowout. So I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch brad point bit. These are great for that. Make nice clean holes. This came out of the 100-piece drill and dry bit set from today's sponsor, Hypertough. I'm also going to be using a bunch of their 20-volt tools, including this cordless hammer drill here. But really, you can just see me using them and see how they perform, because these are very budget-friendly tools, and I see it in the comments all the time. I wish I had a $10,000 workshop, but guess what? You don't need it. You can use very affordable tools and still get great results like we're about to get right here. Now that turned out nice and crisp. Let's do a little test fit. All right, that's gonna work great, so I'm just gonna finish up and drill the other ones. Now, of course, we can't just have squared front edges because I think there's like a law or something against that. So we're gonna grab the top off of some of our spices and use that to lay out a little arc so that we can have a nice rounded corner on the front of the spice rack. We've got nice little rounded edges here, but I do want to clean those up a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and tape these together, and that way I can sand them as one piece and make sure that I've got a nice matching curve on the front of them. When I cut the metal bar to size, I want to make sure that I cut it longer so that it will go into the hole. That is a rookie mistake. I've made it a few times, maybe. We want it going into each side about 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and mark these 2 and cut them. Now, of course, the Hypertough 20-volt batteries can be interchanged across the whole tool set of the 20-volt lineup, but they also have a 4 amp hour battery, which is going to provide some extra juice. Not that I'll probably need it on cutting this aluminum, but you always do have it as a nice option. After the cuts, these are a little bit rough, so I'm going to go ahead and clean them up, buff that up a bit. After I polish this up, check out the difference between these two. Oh, this one looks awesome. It's just like this very cool matte finish to it. And this one was just, you know, kind of bleh. And before we get to assembly, now is a great time to just give everything a nice sand. I'm just using a 150 grit sanding block. And you know, if you have really strong, gnarly calluses, you can just do it with your hand. You know, just, I don't know, my hands are maybe like 400 grit. So I'll use a sanding block. Now you could just glue these together, clamp it up, and it would probably be fine. But I am going to be using a few me nails. If you're not familiar, my name is Brad. So I'm going to actually grab some tape, which is going to help me after the fact. And then as I glue and nail them together, I can fill the nail holes right on top of the blue tape. I'm going to throw some glue in there and hit these things with some me nails. Check that out, that looks great. We can just let this sit for a little bit and dry. Another addition of Mistakes were made. I realized that one of the nails did not sink totally. It's because it double fired, and so it was sticking out. And then I tried to put it in with my nail set, and it ended up starting to bend. So then I grabbed a hammer and started whacking it, and now it is completely bent over. I'm gonna drive everything below the surface, but we will fill it with some wood putty. Give it a little love. Wow, that is an interesting shape there.
Area man arrested on charges for incorporating lewd imagery in his woodworking projects.
Whatever. We're gonna fill this with wood putty, and we won't talk about what just happened here. Now here's the secret of the blue tape. We can just put the wood putty right on top of the blue tape here, and then after we let it set for a minute, we can peel off the blue tape, and you won't get any of that mess. You pull it off, give it a light sanding, and you're good to go. You can paint this to match your cabinets. I just went with a clear spray-on finish just to give it a little protection. So now we are ready to mount this bad boy, but what I realized is that it was bumping up against the hinge. So I marked where that little hinge location is on the back here, and I'm just gonna remove a little bit of wood there. All right, we're ready for install now. You can just use these little brackets right here. They're just little L brackets, and then you could put them right on the bottom and then on the bottom of the undershelf and then screw them into your cabinet. But for me, that's not gonna work out real well. And that's because I have a frame and panel door here. So the panel is actually recessed. Now, if you just have a solid slab door without the frame and panel design that's like 3/4 inch thick, that'll work perfectly for you. Now what I did instead was I put on a little mounting strip under the top of the shelves. Now I should have done this when I assembled the whole thing, but I just used some glue and some brad nails to put this in. So if you're gonna go this route, go ahead and do it while you're assembling the whole thing. And then what I'm gonna do is take this little filler strip and put that in there. And this is just a little 1/4 inch piece of wood, and it's basically just gonna make that solid. The main thing is do not drive a screw all the way through the front of your cabinet. But mounting anything to the back of cabinet doors is a little dicey if you're not going through the frame. So be super, super careful. I got it loaded up, and now I have my 6 most used spices right here. How you like me now? Dillweed. For this next project, I want to attack this little cabinet right here. And it's one of these, it's a kind of tiny, and then it's got a pull-out tray in it. And we right now have a little kitchen appliance in here, but it is a horrible use of space. And instead of having to open it up and pull this out, I want to make use of all the vertical space in here. So what I want to do is convert this from an opening door into a pull-out that has multiple levels on it. And I can store a lot of things that I have over the microwave that are hard to get to up there and that we use quite a bit. So I'm gonna grab some measurements here. We'll start building. All right, for this project, we're not gonna need a lot of wood either. Now I have some 3/4 inch plywood and I cut 4 pieces, and this will all depend upon the size of your cabinet, but I'm cutting them just a little bit more narrow than the opening of my cabinet. But basically what I'm trying to do is make just a little box here. So the bottom will be a shelf, and then this guy will be a shelf that will be able to move up and down. So the idea is I will then put a cabinet door on the front of this, and then I can use these drawer slides, and I can put them across the front, and then they will ride in and out on the drawer slides. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is put a little lipstick on this pig. I love plywood, but the edges look nasty. You can see all the plies in there, but they make something for that. It's called edge banding, and edge banding is just some little veneer strip with some heat activated glue on the back, and I can put that right on the edge and then just trim it up. And to do that, all I have to do is grab my wife's iron. Don't try that at home. I am not using my wife's iron because I value my life. I gotta tell you, applying edge banding is probably one of my favorite woodworking things. It's just like, it's so zen. Put the little guy on here, just like you're ironing some clothes. Just love the smell of edge banded glue in the morning. And it's gonna be hanging over the sides a little bit, so you can just trim that off with a chisel or a razor blade or even just some sandpaper if you need to. Now if we take it out, this looks just like actual hardwood. I really like edge banding. I'm gonna do the rest of these pieces, then we'll get them put together. I really like edge banding. So the front and back are looking great. I even put banding on the top. So we have both sides and the top. And now for these shelves down here, I wanna make sure that they look good too, because You know, you can't have your buns looking good without your meat looking good. Some days I don't know. For the shelves, we also have these plywood edges, but instead of doing edge banding, I'm gonna use these little guys as just 1/4 inch, 1.5 inch strips. So I wanna put a little round over on this edge, and I could do that by hand, but I'm gonna try out the HyperTough 20-volt cordless router. And then these are all brushless motors too, so they're nice and powerful, and this will be perfect for the trim job. And I've got a little 1/8 inch router bit chucked up in it, and I like the fact that we've got dust collection. I'm gonna hook up the dust collection and just put a nice little round over on these, and this will make it just feel good and be nice to the touch so you're not getting splinters or anything like that. Now, these strips turned out great, so I'm gonna now attach these onto the sides. I'm just gonna use a little bit of glue and some me-nails. That turned out real nice, and now we can have things sitting on here and they won't just run off the edge unless you knock them over. I'm gonna do the same thing to this shelf as well, because this will be the floating one, and we want the little boundaries on there for this guy too. I had a little idea, and I wanna see if this works. So this is kind of a little side quest, and I'm hoping that it's gonna fit properly. But the way that I've made these, you put the drawer slides on the side, and then obviously it'll go in and out. The problem is these drawer slides are about 1/2 inch thick. So when you add those two together, you lose a whole inch of cabinet width. Instead of putting these on the outside, what if I recess these on the inside? And so I cut a little corner out of here and put these in. And then that way, the drawer can take up basically the entire width of the cabinet instead of, you know, whatever minus this. So we're gonna try that. I think this will work as long as we get the cuts right, said every woodworker ever. All right, I think these notches turned out nicely. Oh yeah, that is, whoa, perfect. Still got it, folks. I really want this shelf that's gonna be in the middle to be adjustable. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some shelf pin brackets in there, so that way I can put it in one place and then never change it again. Because that's how shelf pins work. And then I've got the bit chucked up here, and you definitely wanna go in high speed, not low speed, because it'll make a cleaner hole. So the 2-speed drill, go for the high speed on that one. Now just flip it over and do the other side the same way, and then that will be perfectly lined up. All right, that turned out great. Now just do the exact same thing on the other side, and it'll be a nice mirror of each other. All right, finally we're ready to assemble. A little assembly trick. I'm gonna use the shelf as kind of just a little stand so that things can be off the bench and I can drill in easier. I'm gonna start with my base here, and I'm gonna put one of my ends right up against it. And I went ahead and pre-drilled for the screws. I'm just gonna screw this together because you're not gonna see it. This will either be on the front behind the front door cabinet or on the back where you can't see it. I'm just using just a little dab will do you. You don't need a ton of glue. So now I can flip this guy around and do the same thing on the other side. I cut a couple little pieces of plywood, and yes, this is plywood, even though it looks like real wood, because I also edge banded it. And I'm gonna put these right here, and this is gonna be what the drawer slides are gonna attach to. And I'm just gonna hold these in place with screws as well. All right, coming back to our cabinet, I wanna go ahead and get everything taken out. These drawer slides are just attached with some screws, so I'm gonna undo those, and then there's some clips in the back that I need to take out. All right, so actually the drill is a little bit too big to grab these. I didn't think I'd be able to use it, but HyperTough sent over their 38-piece stubby tool set, also in this cool little click fit case, and this is gonna be perfect to fit in those tight spots. Hey, check it out. That's perfect. Ooh, oh, it's even ratcheting. The only issue here is that we do have a face frame. So this is kind of a recess. So I can stick my fingers in behind there. So we need to shim that out so that basically the wall of the cabinet will be flush with the face frame inside here. Now I need to position this in here so that I can figure out where to put the drawer slides, because this is gonna be a tight fit. But I need to make sure that we are off of the bottom so that we're not gonna hit that. So what I'm gonna do is put in a little piece of plywood down at the bottom, and that's gonna just raise it up enough to move that front lip. But it is nasty in there, and to make it lay flat, I need to get rid of all this stuff. And I've been waiting to use this guy the whole day. This is a little 1.5 gallon HyperTough wet dry vacuum. And of course it is cordless. It runs off of the little battery here. I put a 4 amp hour in here. I love the idea of having a little vac just to clean up little messes like this, because I'm always making little messes when I'm doing projects. So let's see how this guy works. This little guy worked great. It cleaned up everything super quick, and it is so compact and lightweight. So if you want to check out any of the Hyper Tough tools, I'll have a link down below in the description. If you need some budget-friendly tools, they're going to help you get the job done, you can go check them out. All right, so I think this 1/2 inch piece is going to work a little bit better here. There we go. I really did make this as large as I possibly could, and when you do that, sometimes you're going to run into some fitment issues. So you can make it a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter if you want it to go a little bit easier. Or live on the wild side. Just leave 1/8 of an inch across everywhere. So to mark my drawer slides, I'm just gonna make a little mark here so I can know where to put them. Let's see if we can thread the needle and make this work. All right, I imagine you probably couldn't see any of that, but basically just screw in the little spacers up there, and now these are nice and flush. All right, so this is probably gonna be the trickiest part of this install, and that's gonna be putting the drawer slides in. So I'm gonna take these apart. These are 22-inch drawer slides. Hopefully what I can do is just use my speed square in here, flush it up. All right, I'm gonna need like 7 hands to do this, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it, then we'll see how it turns out. All right, this looks like it worked, and now what I can do is put the inserts back, or the, I don't know what you call these. What do you call it? The interior part of the drawer slide? So I can put these guys back in here, and then what I can do is pull out this drawer and start attaching them that way. So that is how you attach drawer slides easily, is that you get them in there, get it all situated, then make sure it's up on that spacer. We get the 1/2 inch space underneath. And now all I have to do is come in here and drill the holes, and it's way easier because I can do it outside of the box. I'll do the first 2, then I'll pull the whole thing out and do the last 2, and then we can just attach the front. I did have to make a few adjustments, but you kind of always have to do that when you're working with drawer slides. And now, oh yeah, that is simply lovely. Now all I need to do is attach this cabinet to the front. I took the hinges off the back of the door, and I'm also gonna take the handle off, because what I'm gonna do is remount that and drill some new holes after I get it installed. Now I can just kind of take this slab and position it where I think it needs to go, and I wanna make sure that I'm mounting into these rails. So I'm gonna figure that out, drill some holes, and then get these attached. And for the handle, I switched out from these little screws to these larger screws, and I drilled out the hole, and now we can just thread the longer one in there. Oh, that is just gonna be long enough. Oh, that works so perfect. Oh. So I installed the adjustable shelf, and I screwed it into place to make sure that it wouldn't move anywhere. Then it was time to load it up. Now I can take most of this stuff up here and take it down there, and here is exactly why I did this. We've got Himalayan sea salt, but we've got kosher salt, and kosher salt. Because we kept buying it because we didn't know where it was. And some table salt, just for good measure. This turned out amazing. I got it all loaded up with all my spices down on the bottom and all of my different kind of salts up on the top. I even have an entire row open on this back side that I can add things to. And I love the fact that I can just grab from the top here and nice and easily take things out. This is a great upgrade for your kitchen. I've been wanting to do this next project for years, and I've taken advantage of drawers and doors and all the space in between. But there's one space that I have not taken advantage of, and that's the space underneath the cabinets. Now look down here. There's lots of crumbs and dirt and dust balls, but also we've got about 4.5 inches worth of space that is not being used. These cabinets are 35 inches tall, so that's 10% of the cabinet that we're not using. And that stops today. So I'm gonna rip off these toe kicks and see what we're working with. And you may have a substantial toe kick or just a small little thin piece, which is what I have. It's only like 1/8 of an inch thick. So it's basically like kind of that cardboard back you have on those cheap cabinets. I do have some shoe molding down here or quarter round, and I'm just gonna leave that attached to the front of the toe kick cover for now. I don't know, we'll see what happens once I start cutting into this. All right, plan B. Taking off your quarter round or shoe mold is definitely the way to go because if you look in here, the shoe mold is on top of the flooring, but the toe kick is actually kind of squeezed behind it. So you're gonna have to take that out. And when you're installing quarter round, make sure that you use the 3-inch me nails. All right, I was not expecting this. There's actually a piece of particle board, and I've looked up underneath and it goes all the way up to the top. I mean, I'm sure it's hollow underneath. They'll just use a multi-tool to kind of cut whatever fasteners are in here and then see if it just comes out. And hopefully everything else is hollow out there, or this is going to be a very quick project. All right, I found out why this thing is being so difficult. So this little part off here came off pretty easy. Then I stuck my phone in here to see what was going on. There's actually a brace. There's a diagonal brace that goes from this front piece to the bottom of the cabinet. And that's basically supporting the bottom of the cabinet. And the reason behind that is because this is a really wide cabinet. This is a 33-inch cabinet. But I'm gonna go ahead and remove this because inside here, I've actually got pull-out trays, and those are attached to the frame and to the back. So there's actually no weight on that bottom piece at all. So take that into consideration if you're doing this. If you do have a lot of weight on the bottom of a cabinet and you have a wide cabinet, maybe don't do it, but everybody else should be fine. All right, we've got it all opened up, but it is definitely dark under there. I'm gonna use the light on, this is the Hyper Tough 150 watt inverter, so you can actually plug in things to it and run it off of batteries, and you can charge your phone on these USB ports, but the thing I'm gonna use is the light. So it's got this light that you can adjust and move up and down. Oh yeah, it's pretty nasty under there, but we can get that all cleaned up. Then I can start taking some measurements and we can build the drawer. There's really only 3 measurements that we need off this, and that is the width that we have available, the height between the lowest part of the cabinet and the highest part of the floor, so not from the inside, but from the floor, because we're gonna have to be able to slide this thing in there, and then the depth. Now that we got those, we can go do the easy part. Now the way I'm gonna put this drawer in is basically in a whole assembly that I'm just gonna slide in there. That's gonna be a tray with a drawer inside it. So I cut down some 1/2-inch plywood here, and this was basically to a little bit less than the width of that opening back there, and then the depth of my drawer slides, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And then I got a couple pieces of 3/4 inch that I'm gonna use for the sides. And so I'm just gonna be basically building a little tray that we could then attach the slides to these sides, and it will just move in and out. I'm gonna attach the 1/4 inch to the 3/4 inch sides here, and I'm just gonna do that with screws from the underside. And I'm gonna lay out for the screws so that I put them exactly in the middle, because if you don't put them in exactly in the middle, what are you doing? All right, now this is our little tray. It'll just sit right down in here in the drawer. So now we can size our drawer to basically the interior of this. All right, I'm gonna make this drawer very basic and very easy to make. It's only gonna have 2 sides, a front and a back, and a bottom, just like every other drawer ever made. But what I am gonna do is use these amazing drawer slides. These have a secret built into them. I'll show you in a little bit. I've got my sides cut to size, but I need to cut my front and my back, which I left long. And here is the pro tip. This is the best tip in the entire video of how to size a drawer. So instead of just measuring my opening, which I did, and then subtracting 1 inch and then figuring that out, well, what you want to do is you can take your 2 sides, because these are going to be on the side, and put them up against one side of your opening. Now I'm going to measure in between here and the other end, and now I can subtract 1 inch from that. And the reason I'm doing that is because you don't want to just subtract 3/4 inch, 3/4 inch. because plywood is not 3/4 of an inch thick. It's a little bit less than that. So if I measure this plywood right here, instead of being 1.5 inches, this is even a little bit more than a 1/16 under. So if I just subtracted 1.5 inches, my drawer is going to be too small. So that is your pro tip of the day. And rewind it if that didn't make sense. And by the way, while you're at it, just go ahead and subscribe, because I think that tip is worth it. And to put the drawers together, I'm going to use my favorite assembly method, which is pocket holes. I went ahead and drilled some pocket holes on the long end, so the front and the back, and these will be on the outside of the drawer. So I'm just going to set up my drawers here. Just going to line everything up and then zap these together with a few pocket screws. For the bottom, I'm just going to be using a 1/4 inch sheet of plywood, and I measured it and cut it to exactly the dimensions of the drawer here. And I'm also going to use this to square it up as I'm attaching it. All right, and just like that, we've got a finished drawer. Also, I am using this ultralight plywood that looks just like Baltic birch. So I think this looks actually really good, and I'm actually not even going to edge band it because it's got all these plies in here. This stuff is pretty great. I like it a lot. All right, now I can attach these drawer slides, and you'll see what's so cool about them here in just a little bit. But I'm gonna detach these, and I'm just gonna attach the front of them to be even with the front of the sled. I'm gonna match up this other side the same way, and then we can attach the other slide to the side of the doors. And I'll show you a little trick for spacing. All right, for the sides of the drawers, I'm just putting this over here, and I'm gonna use a little 1/4 inch spacer that's gonna go right there. And basically that is gonna allow me to mount the drawer slide right above the actual 1/4 inch bottom. So if I do it this way, then it will be spaced right about a 1/4 inch once it's in the slides from the bottom. Now we can put this little guy in here. There we go. All right, we've got our little drawer all taken care of, but watch this. This is the thing I've been waiting for and trying to figure out how to use it for these, but this is a push to open. Oh, how cool is that? It just locks in place and then it springs out. But it's gonna be so nice, we won't need any handles or anything. So let's go get this installed. So now the trick is that I can slide this in, and we have missed the gap here, which is great. We're not gonna hit that. I'm gonna take the drawer out and then screw that down to the bottom, and then we'll just have to figure out how to get a front on here. This will be great. All right, so as you might expect, this is extremely difficult. And I've realized that going down into the floor is not a great idea, mainly because the back of this cabinet is actually up. So I could shim it up, it's just wanting to suck down, and it's very hard to work with. So instead, I'm gonna attach it through the sides. The reason I didn't wanna do that originally is because there's all this glue and stuff on the sides, and I knew I couldn't make it fit perfectly. So you just wanna make sure that as you screw it in, the sides aren't pushing out. So I put some shims in there. Now I can kind of shim up under this front, get it attached in place. I always knew this was gonna be the hardest part, so we'll see how this goes. And the most important thing to check before you button everything up is to get a long board that will basically, as you push it in, it's gonna hit the outside of the cabinets, because if you have something that hits the cabinets first before it engages the push to open, then it's not gonna work. So I did adjust around that. So I should be able to kick that in and it'll open right up. I've been messing with this fake front here for a little bit, and basically you just have to make sure that when it's fully extended, it's not rubbing on the bottom, and when it comes in, it doesn't hit that top. So it's gonna take a little bit of fooling around. When I get it right, I'm just gonna double stick it on there and then brad nail it in. It'll be nice and secure. Now I can finally grab some of these trays and casserole dishes and store them somewhere else. All right, it is all tuned up and working, and this is the perfect spot to store some of your larger bakeware items, things like that, or even long items like this pizza cutter, which I absolutely love. But I would recommend doing this entire project when nobody else is home, so that you can hide your secret stash. If you want to see some other kitchen storage ideas, I got them queued up for you right here. I'm Brad. Until next time, get out there and build something awesome.